just in. After 5 months of brutal war, what is being called the Battle of Somme has ended in a stalemate. The battle started back in June after the Germans had taken control of the northern tip of France, almost up to the Somme River. Slightly northeast of the river, the Germans had dug in and built a series of deep trenches, protected by barbed wire and heavy machine guns. Hoping to break up the German lines, General Douglas Haig of the British commenced a week-long mortar shell bombardment of the German trenches. Unfortunately, the bombardment did not have the intended effect, and the Germans were well prepared for the British assault. First assault was a complete disaster, ending in the death of 20,000 British troops, as well as 40,000 injured troops, which is the most casualties the British have ever had up to this point. The next 5 months were just as bad. The slow-firing bolt-action rifles of the French and British soldiers didn't stand a chance against the Germans' mounted machine guns. The Germans simply had to sit in their trenches and mow down the hundreds of British and French soldiers attempting to leave their trenches and wildly charge at them. The charging troops were also endangered by the aircraft flying overhead, occasionally bombing the unsuspecting soldiers. When the British and French did manage to move their lines close to the Germans assaulted them in close-quarter combat where long rifles proved to be a hindrance. The soldiers had to resort to clubs, shovels, and pickaxes while in the trenches. The Germans were also proficient at chucking grenades into the British and French trenches, which were useful distractions and good at creating openings in the lines. Even worse was the mustard gas, pumped into the trenches to clear out the soldiers at an alarming rate. Mustard gas inflames the skin, creating large blisters on the soldier's skin and lungs, causing soldiers to drown in their own blood. A truly terrible way to die. For the most part, the battle was simply infantry only. The newly developed tanks are lightly armored, can't cross trenches, only move at 3 miles per hour, and easily break down. Thus, they were quickly abandoned. This battle embodied what is becoming known as trench warfare. If you aren't shot, stabbed, blown up, or gassed, you'll suffer from starvation and injuries, such as trench foot. The numbers are still coming in, but the French and British have suffered at least 600,000 casualties, while the Germans seem to only have 500,000 casualties. With these numbers in mind, tacticians are labeling it as a loss for the British and French. Even so, the British and French were able to slowly push back the Germans, which was the original intent of the attack. We'll have to see what develops after this. Meanwhile, many people are continuing to push for America to join the war. News from the front lines. The U.S. Marines just succeeded in pushing the Germans out of the Belleau Woods after an almost month-long struggle. After the Third Battle of N, the Germans pushed into Belleau Wood, which is dangerously close to Paris. The 2nd and 3rd U.S. divisions joined French and British troops to halt and push back the German forces. The Marines began by advancing through an open field, while firing on German soldiers. While the Marines assaulted Hill 142, a hidden group of machine gun nests rained machine gun fire upon the advancing Marine. Fortunately, the hill was taken, and the Germans retreated back into the woods. After more machine gun fire and artillery shells were exchanged, the Marines pushed into the woods in a series of 6 different attacks, and opened fire on all who stood in their way. After using up most of their ammo, the Marines resorted to bayonets, clubs, and fists. The fighting in the woods was so chaotic that a few battalions became lost in the woods and were cut down. A total of 5 German divisions defended against this attack. They retaliated with machine gun fire and large amounts of mustard gas, which proved deadly in the crowded forest. However, despite the odds stacked against them and the harsh resistance of the Germans, the Marines were able to push through and force the Germans back out of the Belleau Woods, bringing pride to America.